Hello, my name is Christine Eck. I'm the director for the Center for Sacred Window Studies, and it is my great pleasure and honor to be here today with Nena Complo, has joined our team as an organizational outreach person and incredible support to the center. And Nena, thank you so much for letting me talk to you and record our conversation today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it feels important to introduce you and to let people know all the great things that you're doing and where you come from. And slowly, as we evolve as a center, we're telling more of our stories and having our backgrounds and our viewpoints sort of unfold. And it feels incredible to connect with people in a further way and have people join this team and bring their gifts and their incredible backgrounds. So that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today. And Nena, to begin with, I'd love to hear a little bit about the evolution of what brought you to want to work with new parents and babies.
Okay, sure. Well, for me, this path really started after I had my first baby. I have three children, and I had my first baby in 2013. And honestly, it was like right after I had her, within a few months, I just felt this pull to work with childbearing families. And especially at that time, I was really drawn to work with moms. And I actually attended my first birth when my daughter was 4 months, and she came with me. And it was really spontaneous. And it was actually, my baby wasn't the only baby there. There were two 4-month-old babies. It's very, very interesting. But yeah, in the beginning, I just started with the things that I was already connecting with at that time, which was really like plants and just really basic herbalism. And one of the first classes I taught was just out of my apartment. I had women come and talk about, we talked about herbs for fertility and breastfeeding. I made some teas to support breastfeeding and sold them at a cafe I had worked at for a long time. So it just started really organically. It wasn't anything that I thought about too much. It just felt really natural after having my first daughter to start supporting other moms.
I think that's such a common experience of when we go through that incredible journey ourselves, there's something that just creates this need to want to help support somebody else who's going through this incredible transition because it is so life-changing. And I think for lack of a more appropriate word, like the magic around that experience of coming into a new world from, pregnancy into postpartum, it's such a special, unique moment that the sort of subtleties of it I find to be not addictive, but just like to be able to stay in that space for a little bit longer, even if it's to help serve somebody else, feels incredible. So Nena, you've lived a number of different places. You've lived in the Midwest. You're currently in Asheville, North Carolina. And you have a really rich background in yoga. Talk about how your connection to yoga and Ayurveda and postpartum and birth, and talk about that connection for you.
Sure. So I started practicing yoga when I was 18, which was 12 years ago. And I started teaching in 2011. And so I had already been working as a yoga teacher before having babies and before getting into doula work. So I really carried my yoga teacher training with me from the very beginning of working with other families. And I really felt like yoga teacher training was the best doula training. It was, especially in terms of like non-judgment and compassion and body awareness and helping people connect with their bodies and connect with their breath and staying present. I have been able to do a few different trainings while pregnant. Also, I did my first training in Vishwa yoga, which is universal yoga, when I was pregnant with my second baby. And that just really set me up for her birth in a different way with like meditation was a big focus for me in that birth. And I feel like that experience in particular shifted the way that I work with people. And I really started doula work more actively after having my second child. And so it's so funny to look back on it. I'm remembering these trainings that I was doing, like all these different things at the same time. I was doing an advanced training in elemental yoga therapy or Ayurvedic yoga. And during that year-long training, I took birth doula training. And so for me, there's never been a separation with yoga and Ayurveda and the work I do with families. Like it's very intertwined. And I've even had the opportunity to teach some prenatal yoga and childbirth education together, which is something that I'm working on, like growing into like a more in-depth program, but I've been able to do it once so far. And it was a really beautiful experience because I had one participant, which was awesome because she felt really open to just like ask for what she wanted. And one time she brought her husband and her son, and one time she brought her sister who was going to be at the birth. And we were just able to have connection around like a broader range of her experience, which is something that I really value. So I feel like I could talk about this all day. So I think I'm going to stop there for now.
It's such a natural connection, yoga and doula work. I agree. I think that there are such valuable tools within the whole spectrum of understanding and experiencing yoga that can be applied. And that's, so beautiful with yoga and Ayurveda being so closely linked and related and supportive of one another. That's beautiful. Thank you. Mm-hmm. So I want to ask you a little bit about what is fueling your work with the Center for Sacred Window Studies. I feel like your connection with this organization has been such a natural one. You began as a mentoring student with the Sacred Window School, and you were, in our very first cohort ever for this school. And, you've kind of just been with us along this journey. And how do you feel like your calling has manifested to be part of this organization, and what is driving your sort of personal mission alongside with the larger organization? Talk a little bit about that.
Okay, sure. So yes, as you just shared, I started with the Sacred Window School in I think it was 2016. So my second daughter was a baby. And I really feel like I was going through that original program looking for some answers for myself. I already knew I wanted to work with moms, and but at that time I had a really difficult postpartum experience with my daughter, and I still felt like I needed a lot of healing, even though she was maybe 8-ish months by the time I went through that program. But that's important to me, like as a person, to have a personal connection with whatever work that I'm doing. That's just like part of who I am and how I work. So I'm thankful that I came to this specific work for a personal reason. And then, as you shared also, I started going through this program with your first cohort, and that was super fun. we conceived our third baby like in the first or second week of the program. So, yeah, I mean, when you ask me about like my connection to this work and this center in particular, for me, it has a lot to do with bringing in my third child, which is something that I'm still like wrapping my head around, because it was really like a few months around the time of conception that I started to feel like my work was going to change, and that it had a lot to do with this baby and this person coming in. And I just felt really like open to that. But I also knew that it was going to have to do with postpartum care. And that was about all I got. But I was like, okay, like, here we go. So then going through this program while being pregnant was so cool. And again, I've been in a really like self-focused place, and it was like actually a lot of work for me to not work, to like surrender that I was learning all of these things, and like, you know, feeling really inspired to work with other families, but feeling like it was time for me to really direct that to myself and my own family. And to just be okay with that. And I feel like that was a really powerful experience for me, because I feel like that's what the sacred window work is all about. It's like, let this be a time that's focused on you and your care and your family and your connection with your baby. And, you know, it can be a lot of work to learn how to receive. And so I feel like it was a really powerful experience for me to just like close my container a little bit and say, okay, like everything is just gonna, like all my knowledge and skills, everything is just gonna go towards this, to me right now, and to this postpartum experience and nurturing the relationship with my baby and my family. And so like, that's really the place that I'm coming from, is from knowing like how challenging it can be to open up to receiving care and to like giving it to myself and prioritizing self-care, and to have walked that path a little bit. And you know, I'm not saying that like my postpartum experience was perfect, but knowing everything that I did and having an amount of dedication to keep coming back to the focus on self-care every day. It became a meditation every day throughout my sacred window. It was like, okay, all these things are happening and everything's trying to pull me away, but like, what can I do right now to take care of myself? Even if that was take a nap or take a deep breath. You know, of course I had a long list of like, drink this tea and, you know, like very specific things that I would get to as well. And yeah, I was super excited when you invited me to work with the center when I was, I think like 2 or 3 months postpartum. So it's pretty recent. But that just felt, and still does feel, really in line with where I'm at in my life right now. And it's like almost hard to put words to. I was just talking to my husband about this the other night. I'm like, this is my favorite job that I've ever had. I'm like, I've done some really cool stuff, but this, the work that I'm doing with you all right now is really, I'm able to use all of my gifts, and it's like not just one area. So I'm super excited to be able to use like my skills and passion for communication and connecting, with work that is supporting childbearing families and supporting caregivers. I feel really great about being part of that work. So it's a super exciting time for me, and I feel very actualized, and I think I'm still just getting comfortable with it. Like, instead of having all of these ideas, like one day I'm going to have this really cool job. I'm like, no, I have that job. I wake up and I'm like, I have that job. I have my dream job right now. Like, this is awesome. So, yeah, it's really that great. It's really that great. So I'm excited to share that.
Aw, that's incredible to hear you say. It feels very in line as well. My vision in creating this center was that it was a platform for those of us in this profession that have an idea or a way to make this movement grow. It's about individual families, and it's also about taking care of shifting society as well to a more supportive model. So it feels very personal, it feels very close, and it also feels like this giant wave that we all get to kind of jump on together to move this really important thing forward. And so to have you come on board and use this platform as a space to participate and to add to that wave of energy and shift feels incredible for us. Nena, thank you so much for letting me talk to you, and I'm excited to share your words and your story with our audience. And you already are such a beautiful presence, and it feels important for them to understand you and know who you are as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
And you'll hear much more from Nena along the way. Thank you all for listening. And yeah, thank you for being a part of the Sacred Window work in the world.